127 million Americans are about to lose everything they own. Not might lose, will lose. And most of them have no idea it's coming. Right now, as you're watching this, the United States federal government is sitting on $36.2 trillion in debt. That's trillion with a T. That number just crossed a threshold that has never in human history been crossed without catastrophic consequences. We hit this number in January 2025, and the trajectory is accelerating faster than at any point since World War II. But here's what nobody's telling you. This isn't new. This isn't unprecedented. This isn't some unique crisis that just emerged. This is a pattern. A pattern that has repeated itself exactly 27 times across the last 2,000 years of recorded economic history. And every single time, without exception, the outcome was the same. Total wealth destruction for the majority. Massive wealth transfer to those who understood what was happening. And a complete restructuring of the economic order. We are now in stage 3 of this pattern. There is one stage left. And what I'm about to show you will change how you see everything happening in America right now. Everything you think you know about the economy, about your savings, about your retirement, it's all about to be challenged. Because history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes perfectly. Let me show you the mechanism. Every economic collapse in history follows the same 4-stage pattern. It doesn't matter if we're talking about ancient Rome, Weimar Germany, or the United States in 2025. The pattern is identical. The players change. The technology changes, the propaganda changes, but the mathematical reality underneath, always the same. Stage 1 is the foundation. A nation or empire establishes a stable currency system. People trust it. Commerce flourishes. Wealth accumulates. Trade expands. Everything seems solid, permanent, unshakable. This stage can last decades, even centuries. The longer it lasts, the more invincible it feels. The more people forget that it can end. Stage 2 is expansion and debasement. The government needs more money. Maybe it's war. Maybe it's massive social programs. Maybe it's corruption and incompetence. Doesn't matter. The reason is always different, but the mechanism is always the same. They can't raise taxes enough because the population will revolt, so they do something else. They debase the currency. They print more money. They borrow against future generations who can't vote yet. At first, nobody notices. In fact, the economy even seems to boom. Credit flows everywhere. Asset prices soar. Stock markets hit record highs. Real estate goes parabolic. Everyone feels richer on paper. But it's an illusion. It's all an illusion built on expanding currency supply. Stage 3 is loss of control. The debt becomes mathematically unpayable, not politically difficult to pay, impossible. The numbers don't work anymore. Inflation starts creeping in, then crawling, then running, then sprinting. The government prints more money to service the existing debt. This creates more inflation, which requires more printing. A feedback loop begins that cannot be stopped through policy alone. Currency confidence starts cracking. Smart money? People with real wealth and understanding, they start moving into hard assets, gold, silver, land, productive businesses, anything that cannot be printed into existence. The government tries desperately to maintain control through price controls, capital controls, propaganda campaigns, manipulation of statistics. It never works. It has never worked once in history. Stage 4 is the inevitable outcome, currency collapse. Either hyperinflation where your money becomes wallpaper, or massive deflation through default where the system just seizes up and dies. Savings evaporate overnight, pensions vanish. The middle class, the productive backbone of society, gets completely destroyed. Wealth concentrates massively in the hands of those few who positioned correctly before the collapse. Then a new system emerges from the ashes, and the cycle begins again. This pattern is not a theory. It's not a prediction or a guess. It's not something economists debate. It's a historical law as reliable as gravity. And I'm going to prove it to you right now with 3 undeniable examples spanning 2,000 years. Let's start with Rome. The year is 64 AD. Rome is the most powerful empire on Earth. The denarius, their silver coin, is the global reserve currency of the ancient world. It contains 95% pure silver. Everyone trusts it. Merchants in Britain, Egypt, Spain, Mesopotamia, they all accept it. Trade across 3 continents runs on it. The foundation seems unbreakable. Stage 1, foundation, check. Then the expensive wars begin. Nero needs money, lots of it. He's building palaces, hosting games, keeping the population pacified with bread and circuses. He can't tax the population enough without causing revolt. And so he does something clever. He reduces the silver content of the denarius from 95% to 90%. Just 5% less, then to 85%. Nobody really notices because the coin still looks the same, still feels the same, still has the imperial seal on it. This continues for generations. Emperor after emperor, war after war, each one debasing a little more. By 217 AD, under Emperor Caracalla, the denarius is only 50% silver. Half the coin is now base metal. By 270 AD, less than 5%. The coin is basically worthless bronze with a silver coating that rubs off in your pocket. Stage 2, debasement, check. Now here's where it gets interesting. What happened to prices during this time? In 1 AD, a pound of gold could buy you about 40 pounds of wheat, a reasonable, stable ratio. By 300 AD, that same pound of gold bought you 120,000 pounds of wheat. Read that again. 120,000 pounds. That's not because gold suddenly became more valuable. Gold doesn't change. It's because the currency became worthless. Inflation went exponential. Prices doubled, then doubled again, then doubled again. The government tried price controls under Emperor Diocletian in 301 AD, the Edict on Maximum Prices. It mandated the death penalty for merchants who charged more than the official government prices. They literally executed people for charging market rates. Did it work? Of course not. It made things catastrophically worse. Goods disappeared from markets entirely. Why would a farmer bring grain to the city to sell at controlled prices when he could barely cover his costs? Black markets exploded. The formal economy seized up. People stopped producing. Cities started emptying as people fled back to subsistence farming. Stage 3, loss of control, check. By 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire collapsed entirely. Not from barbarian invasions primarily. The invasions happened because the empire was already dead economically. The currency system disintegrated completely. Local economies reverted to pure barter. No coins, no banks, no complex trade. Cities that had 1 million people shrank to a few thousand. Trade collapsed. The aqueducts fell into disrepair. The roads crumbled. It took Europe 1,000 years to recover the level of economic sophistication and living standards that Rome had achieved. Stage 4, inevitable outcome, check. And here's the part nobody talks about. The Roman middle class, the merchants, the traders, the small landowners, the backbone of the empire, was completely wiped out. Every single one. Their savings in debased currency became worthless. Their government pensions vanished. Their economic security disappeared. But some people got rich. Anyone who understood the pattern early. Anyone who moved their wealth out of currency and into land, into gold, into productive assets before the collapse. When the dust settled, they owned everything. The land, the remaining infrastructure, the power. Sound familiar yet? We're just getting started. Fast forward to 1914, Germany. One of the most advanced industrial nations on Earth. Sophisticated banking system, strong manufacturing base. The papier mark is stable, trusted, backed by the gold standard. People have savings, retirements, plans for the future. Then World War I happens. The war costs money, unbelievable amounts of money. Germany can't tax enough to pay for it without destroying the economy during wartime. So they borrow, and they print. They tell themselves it's temporary. Once we win the war, we'll pay it all back with reparations from the conquered nations. Stage 1 ends the moment that printing press starts running in 1914. The war ends in 1918. Germany loses. The Treaty of Versailles demands reparations. 132 billion gold marks. An impossible sum, more than Germany's entire GDP. The Allies want to ensure Germany can never rise again. Germany can't pay in gold because they don't have it. So they pay in paper. They print marks. Trillions of them. Quadrillions of them. Numbers that had never been seen before in human history. In 1918, 4.2 marks bought $1 US. By November 1923, 5 years later, it took 4.2 trillion marks to buy $1. Let that sink in for a moment. Trillion. That's a 1 followed by 12 zeros. That's a million. A loaf of bread that cost 250 marks in January 1923 cost 200 billion marks by November of the same year. Workers demanded to be paid twice a day. They'd rush out at lunch to spend the morning's wages before they lost half their value by dinner. Families needed wheelbarrows full of cash to buy basic groceries. Children used stacks of worthless billion-mark notes as building blocks because they were worth less than actual toys. Stage 2 and Stage 3 happened in less than 5 years. Compressed, accelerated, catastrophic. The government tried everything. Price controls, capital controls, rationing. Propaganda campaigns telling people the economy was fundamentally strong and the crisis was temporary. They blamed foreign speculators. They blamed profiteers. They blamed everyone except their own currency printing. None of it worked. Not one single intervention. The middle class was annihilated completely. Life savings that took 3 generations to build became worthless overnight. A retirement account that could have bought a house in 1922 couldn't buy a loaf of bread in 1923. Pensions became jokes. Bank accounts became toilet paper, literally. But here's what most people don't know, what they don't teach you in school. Some people got extraordinarily rich during Weimar. Anyone who understood the pattern moved their wealth into hard assets before the collapse accelerated. Real estate, gold, foreign currency, productive businesses that made actual goods. When the dust settled and the new currency was introduced, they owned everything. The factories, the land, the buildings. They bought Germany for pennies. Stage 4, complete restructuring, verified. And you know what came next? Political extremism, social chaos. The middle class destruction created the conditions for the rise of the Nazi Party. Economic collapse doesn't just destroy wealth, it destroys societies, it destroys trust, it destroys the social fabric. And into that vacuum, extremism flows. You think this only happens in ancient history or a century ago? Let's talk about Venezuela, right now. Our current era, the year 2000. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the entire world. Larger than Saudi Arabia. The economy is growing, the bolivar is stable and trusted, people have jobs, savings, hope for the future. Venezuela is supposed to be the success story of South America. Stage 1, foundation, solid. Then Hugo Chavez comes to power in 1999. Social programs expand massively, government spending explodes, but oil prices are high, so it works, for a while. Money is flowing in from oil exports. Everything seems sustainable, but oil prices don't stay high forever. Markets are cyclical. By 2013, oil revenues start dropping. The government needs money to maintain the social programs that keep them in power. They can't cut spending without losing political support and facing potential revolution. So they print, and they borrow. They tell the population everything is fine. The problems are temporary, caused by foreign interference. By 2016, inflation hits 800%. The government denies there's a problem. They implement price controls. They blame merchants for hoarding goods. They call it economic warfare by American imperialism. Classic stage 3 behavior, textbook responses that have never worked. By 2018, inflation hits 65,000%. By 2019, 10 million %. Let me put that in perspective so your brain can actually process it. A cup of coffee that cost 450 bolivars in 2016 cost 3 million bolivars in 2019. 3 years, 3 million %. The minimum wage became so worthless that people literally earned more money recycling the bills as scrap paper than using them as currency. Think about that. The paper was worth more than the number printed on it. Doctors abandoned their practices. Lawyers closed their offices. Engineers left their projects. Why? Because they could earn more selling fruit on the street corner or mining Bitcoin than practicing their profession. Millions fled the country, the largest refugee crisis in the Western Hemisphere. Those who stayed watched their life savings, their parents' savings, their grandparents' legacy, all of it disappear like smoke. Stage 4, total collapse, undeniable. But again, and this is crucial, some people saw it coming. Anyone who converted their bolivars into US dollars, Bitcoin, or gold before 2015 preserved their wealth. Everyone else lost everything. Not some of it, everything. Now here's where your attention needs to sharpen, because we're applying this exact pattern to the United States in 2025. Stage 1, foundation. The US dollar became the global reserve currency after World War II. The Bretton Woods system established it in 1944. For decades, it was backed by gold at $35 per ounce. Stable, trusted, anchored to reality, the foundation of global trade and commerce. Check. But in 1971, President Nixon ended the gold standard. He closed the gold window. From that moment forward, the dollar became a pure fiat currency, backed by nothing except government decree and global trust. No gold, no silver, no commodity. Just paper and promises. That's when stage 2 began. And most people don't realize this. 1971 is the inflection point. From that moment, the printing started in earnest. In 1971, U.S. federal debt was $398 billion. Today, January 2025, it's $36.2 trillion. That's a 9,000% increase. The money supply has exploded beyond anything Rome or Weimar ever achieved. M2 money supply has gone from $600 billion in 1971 to over $21 trillion today. But here's the key thing that makes America's situation unique. For decades, this didn't cause obvious domestic inflation. Why? Because the US exported its inflation to the rest of the world. Every country that needed to buy oil had to buy dollars first. Every country conducting international trade needed dollar reserves. Every central bank held dollars as their reserve asset. The US could print, and the entire world absorbed the inflation. This is the privilege, the exorbitant privilege, of having the reserve currency. You can export your monetary problems to everyone else, for a while. But that privilege is ending, right now. As you're watching this, stage 2, debasement, verified beyond any doubt. Now we're entering stage 3, and this is where it gets terrifying. The debt is mathematically unpayable. We're not talking about politically difficult, we're talking about impossible. The US government paid over $1.1 trillion just in interest payments in 2024. That's more than the entire defense budget. more than we spend on education, infrastructure, and science combined. To service this debt, the government has three options, only three. Option 1, raise taxes dramatically, politically impossible. The population would revolt. Option 2, cut spending dramatically, also politically impossible. Every program has a constituency that will fight to the death to protect it. Option 3, print more money. Guess which one they're choosing. Guess which one they will always choose. Inflation has already started accelerating. Real inflation, not the manipulated consumer price index numbers the government publishes. Housing costs are up 47% since 2020. Food costs up 31% since 2020. Energy costs volatile but trending higher. Insurance costs up 38%, healthcare up 26%. And the government's response? More spending. The Inflation Reduction Act, which actually increased spending, more debt. The debt ceiling gets raised every single time it's hit. More printing. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet is still at historically unprecedented levels. The Federal Reserve tried to fight inflation with interest rate hikes in 2022 and 2023. But here's the trap. The debt is so massive now that high interest rates break the system. Banks started failing in 2023. Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, First Republic. Markets crashed. The government had to step in with bailouts. So the Fed was forced to pause the hikes and is now cutting rates again, which means resuming monetary expansion. This is the classic Stage 3 trap. Exactly what happened in Rome. Exactly what happened in Weimar. Exactly what happened in Venezuela. The government has lost control of the currency system. They can't raise rates without breaking the economy and the banking system. They can't lower rates without accelerating inflation. They're trapped in a vice of their own creation. There is no policy solution that works. None. And here's the part that should make your blood run cold. The de-dollarization has begun. China and Russia are conducting bilateral trade in yuan and rubles. Saudi Arabia, our oldest Middle East ally, is now accepting yuan for oil sales. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are actively developing alternative payment systems to bypass the dollar. They're creating their own SWIFT alternative. Central banks globally are buying gold at record rates, over 1,000 tons in 2023 alone. Why? Because they see what's coming. They're reading the same historical pattern I just showed you. When the world stops absorbing dollars, when international trade no longer requires dollar reserves, all that printed currency comes flooding back to the United States. That's when domestic hyperinflation begins. That's when Stage 3 accelerates into Stage 4. Stage 3, loss of control, check. We are here, right now. Now let me tell you exactly what those 127 million Americans are about to lose. That number represents every American household whose wealth is primarily in dollar-denominated assets that can be inflated away. That's roughly 40% of American households. Savings accounts, bonds, fixed pensions, cash value life insurance, Social Security promises that are paid in future devalued dollars, money market accounts, certificates of deposit, treasury bonds, all of it denominated in dollars that are being systematically devalued. When Stage 4 hits, and it will hit, here's what happens. If we get hyperinflation like Weimar or Venezuela, your $100,000 in savings might still say $100,000 in your bank account. The number doesn't change, but it'll buy what 5,000 buys today, or 500, or 50. Your purchasing power evaporates while the nominal number stays the same. If we get deflationary collapse through default, like what almost happened in 2008, but 100 times worse, your bonds become worthless. Your pension fund goes bankrupt because it's holding government bonds that defaulted. Your bank fails because it's holding mortgage-backed securities and treasuries that collapsed. Either way, hyperinflation or deflation, the middle class gets destroyed. Your retirement account that was supposed to last 20 years lasts 2. Your kid's college fund doesn't cover 1 semester. Your parents' pension doesn't cover their rent. Just like Rome. Just like Weimar. Just like Venezuela, the pattern is absolute. The mathematics are absolute. I know exactly what you're thinking right now. I can hear the objections forming in your mind, but this time is different. America is too powerful to fail. We have the world's strongest military. We have nuclear weapons. We have Silicon Valley. We have innovation. Technology will save us. Let me destroy these myths right now because they're dangerous. They're the same myths every civilization told itself before collapse. Myth 1, this time is different. No, it's not. It never is. Every civilization thought they were different. Rome thought their empire was eternal, ordained by the gods, destined to rule forever. The Germans in 1920 thought they were too advanced, too educated, too sophisticated for currency collapse. The Venezuelans thought they had too much oil, too many natural resources to fail. The pattern doesn't care about your technology. It doesn't care about your military. It doesn't care about your confidence or your exceptionalism or your innovations. It only cares about mathematics. When debt exceeds the ability to repay, when currency printing exceeds productive economic growth, the currency fails. This is mathematical law, not economic theory. Law. Myth. 2. The dollar is the reserve currency, so we're safe. This is the most dangerous myth of all. The reserve currency status is exactly what allows stage 2 to go on longer and get more extreme than it otherwise would. Britain could print more because the pound was the reserve currency, right up until it wasn't. Every reserve currency in history has eventually failed. The Roman denarius was the reserve currency of the ancient world. The Spanish real was the reserve currency in the 1500s. The Dutch guilder in the 1600s. The British pound in the 1800s and early 1900s. The average lifespan of a reserve currency is 94 years. The dollar has been the global reserve currency for 80 years since Bretton Woods. We're in the end game, the final chapter. And when a reserve currency fails, it fails harder and faster than regular currencies because there's so much more of it in circulation globally. Myth 3. Technology and productivity will save us. Technology creates real wealth. Innovation drives productivity. This is true, but it cannot overcome monetary debasement. It can't. Weimar Germany had advanced technology for its time. They had precision engineering, chemical industries, scientific innovation. It didn't save them from hyperinflation. Technology creates real value, but when the government prints money faster than the economy can create value, the printing wins. Math wins. Right now, the US is adding debt faster than GDP is growing. $4 trillion in new debt last year. GDP grew maybe 2.5%. That's the definition of unsustainable. The math doesn't work. It cannot work. And math always wins in the end. Here's the bottom line. Everything I've shown you. The United States is following the exact same pattern that has destroyed 27 civilizations before it. Stage 1, complete. The foundation was built with Bretton Woods and then abandoned in 1971 when Nixon closed the gold window. Stage 2, complete. 54 years of continuous currency debasement and debt accumulation from 1971 to 2025. Stage 3, in progress right now. Loss of control is happening as you watch this. The Fed is trapped. The government is trapped. The debt spiral is accelerating. Stage 4, coming. The only question is timing. Will it be next year? 5 years? 10 years? I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody can know. But the direction is absolutely certain. The mathematics guarantee it. The pattern demands it. So what do? How do you position yourself on the right side of this wealth transfer? First, understand that cash is not safety. Cash is not wealth. Cash is the thing being destroyed. Holding cash is like holding ice cubes in your hand. Every second you hold it, it melts a little more. Second, move wealth into hard assets that cannot be printed into existence. Gold, silver, Bitcoin if you understand it, real estate in desirable areas, productive businesses that make actual goods and services people need. Anything with intrinsic value. Third, reduce your exposure to dollar-denominated promises, long-term government bonds, fixed pensions that can't adjust for inflation. Anything that depends on the government keeping its purchasing power promises 30 years from now. Fourth, increase your ability to produce real value. Learn skills, build relationships, create community. When currencies collapse, people who can produce actual goods and services survive and thrive. Plumbers, electricians, mechanics, doctors, teachers, people with real skills. Those who only hold paper wealth and have no productive skills do not survive. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This is historical pattern recognition. This is mathematics. This is seeing reality clearly instead of believing comfortable myths. 127 million Americans are about to learn what every previous civilization learned the hard way. You cannot print wealth. You can only print currency. And when the printing stops working, when confidence breaks, the currency wealth vanishes overnight. But it doesn't vanish into thin air. Nothing in economics just disappears. It transfers. To those who understood the pattern, to those who positioned correctly, to those who studied history instead of ignoring it, to those who owned real assets instead of paper promises. The question is simple. Which side of this wealth transfer will you be on? The side that gets wiped out, or the side that survives and rebuilds? If this video opened your eyes, if this changed how you see what's happening, you need to subscribe right now, because what I just showed you is only the beginning. In my next video, I'm going to reveal the exact 3-step system that the top 1%, the people who actually understand this pattern, are using right now to position for stage 4. The specific moves they're making while everyone else is watching sports and scrolling social media. The exact assets they're accumulating, the sectors they're moving into, and the one investment class that has survived every single currency collapse in human history without exception. You need to see it. You need to understand it. Because when stage 4 hits, when the currency crisis accelerates, it will be too late. There will be no time to reposition. No time to move assets. No time to learn. The people who survive currency collapses are the people who prepared before the crisis became obvious to everyone.